All right, good morning. Happy Earth Day, 50 years today. We have some bio students with us today that are going to be presenting on some biome projects that they've been working on in Cynthia Morgan's class. And then we'll have some Earth Day presentations from Cynthia afterwards on recycling, endangered species, and a couple other things. So without further ado, we'll start with our first presentation. All right, as soon as you want to start, just jump right in. You're good to go.
Okay, hi, I'm Morgan Matika. Guys, do you want to introduce yourselves, or?
Oh, sorry, I'm Lily Morris, and no,
All right, Gina can't speak for some reason. Gina, can you unmute, or? Okay,
And now.
all right, cool. Introduce yourself if you could.
Okay. And I'm Gina Douglas.
All right. Our biome presentation will be on the tropical rainforest. Next slide. And yeah, this is the biome itself. Next slide. Look, there are multiple locations for the rainforest across the planet. Go back one slide, please.
hello.
Okay. Some are found in Central America, such as the Amazon River Basin. There are several ones found across Africa, in Indo-Malaysia, around like New Guinea, Australia. You have these from Madagascar, West Africa. Next slide, please. They're all found near the equator, which partially is the reason for their heat. They're normally very humid climates. They cover about 6% of the Earth's landscape, and a point to be made here is certain elements of the research, such as certain slides in the latter half, will be focusing around the Sumatra to Indonesia area of the rainforest system. Next slide, please. Oh, yes. There's an average of anywhere between 50 to 260 inches of rainfall per year in the rainforest, and that means about 1/8 of an inch of rain per day. And because of its closest to the equator, that is partially caused by a very humid climate. Next slide, please. Now, there are 4 different layers to the rainforest. The tallest layer is the emergent layer. That's usually the umbrella-shaped trees or canopies you see on the top of the forest, as you can see in the picture in the top left-hand corner. Below the emergent layer is the upper canopy, which is about the trees up anywhere between 60 to 130 feet tall, and it has about the most easiest access to light, and most of the animals can be found, of the rainforest can be found here, as you can see in the picture right next to the population on the bottom left. Below that is the understory. It's a lower canopy, there's nearly constant shade, high humidity, and the like, little air movement, as you can see from the picture on the top right-hand side, and below that, at the very bottom, is the forest floor. Completely shaded, little access to light, and a lot of the litter and decomposer organisms are found in this layer, as you can see from the picture of the elephant at the lower bottom. Next slide, please. There's a lot of interesting animal species in the rainforest. I'm just simply giving you a showcase of some either well-known ones or um,
Oh,
all right, that's fair. Apologies. Okay, the first animal I was saying, as you can see in the top right-hand corner, is the jaguar. They can be found in both Central America and and northern Mexico. They're normally found located in the understory, and they're the solitary and apex predator of the biome predominantly. The next organism is the flying fox. A fruit bat. They are found in the emergent layer. Next slide. You have the tapir, which is found in South and Central America. Normally found around southern southeastern Asia. They are located on the forest floor of the biome. You have the what you saw on the last slide was a picture of the western lowland gorilla. It's found in Central Africa on the forest floor as well. It is a critically endangered species, and it is normally what people consider a gorilla to normally look like. Is as I found on my source, the gorilla. The next organism is the poison dart frog, normally found in the understory. Only 3 actual species are considered lethal. And their coloration is normally used to ward off predators. Next slide. You also have the boa constrictor, found normally in the Americas and the Caribbean, and are normally found lurking around the understory. You have the spider monkey, found in South and Central America as well. They are usually found around in the upper canopy, and all 7 species of this animal are also endangered. And a final prominent animal found in the rainforest is the three-toed sloth, also found in South and Central America, upper canopy, and are known to have its three.
did we?
I think we lost Morgan.
Okay, I'll take over then. Next slide, please. So the plant population of the tropical rainforest biome has over 15,000 plant species. So we're obviously not going to name them all, and instead I'm going to break them down by structure. Next slide, please. So in the canopy, you mainly have trees, vines, or hook climbing plants, and those are plants that have little hooks on them that actually reach towards like the sunlight. Then you have the understory, which is right underneath that, and that's plants that can survive with little sunlight, which they only get it from the little pockets that they can get through the canopy, or some plants that actually absorb nutrients through other plants by either growing into their root system or growing onto their trunks and taking the nutrients from that. And then on the floor and sometimes in the ground, you have mushrooms who feed off of decomposing plants. Next slide, please. And that's Gina, are you on? Because fungi is
right.
first.
I'm on. part of the population of the rainforest is obviously the fungi population. And a few examples of them are Latina Pusilla, which is found in Central and South America, the scarlet elfcap, which is a small fungus with small red cups, and has distinct hairs, which we call eyelashes on them. The Cordyceps militaris also uses ants and other insects as a means to spread its spores. And we have the Panella stripticus, which is bioluminescent and attaches to branches. Next slide. And there's also the microorganism population. And in the rainforest, one of the major parts is the mycorrhizae relationship, which is a plant benefactor which attaches itself to the roots. Increase nutrient intake efficiency, which is also bonding with the fungus. This is antinomycete, which is a complex bacteria which has a great ecological value as an antimicrobial compound factor. This acidophilic bacteria, which thrive in soil, due to the acidic nature, and they have high water movement. And the blue-green algae, which is a cyanobacteria which grows under the cuticle. Next slide. One of the major services that tropical rainforests serve to the planet is that it makes up around 40% of the planet's oxygen production. And due to that abundance, it's home for more than half the plants and animals that are found on the planet. Next slide. Threats that are facing this biome, one of which is in the picture here, is deforestation, which a lot of people are cutting down trees using to build more things, which pays more weight, which cuts down the oxygen and will increase the chances of it flooding there too. And that's just one of the threats. Next slide.
I think I can cover this one now, guys. I think my audio is back. Sorry for that. Okay, the first endangered animal I found is the Sumatran orangutan, which is losing its home to deforestation to make room for farmland. And that ends up cutting off the orangutan.
Okay, so maybe not.
You think you get this, Lily? Wait. Morgan?
I think we lost him again, guys.
Okay, I'll take over again. Sorry about that. So back to the problem with endangered animals. So the Sumatran orangutan is losing its home due to deforestation to make room for farming locations. As a result, raids on human farms in order to compensate for their diet, and there are very few remaining natural food sources. Next slide, please. There is a patchwork of farms that have no distinct separation from the natural food sources and the farm crops, so it gets very mixed in. And the best course of action is conservation of forests and maintenance of the natural food supplies. Next slide, please. The flat-headed cat is a felidae found in the tropical lowlands of Thailand and Malaysia. Borneo, and Sumatra. Sorry if I mispronounce those. They are losing their habitat to land clearance for plantations with gold mining and farming, causing presumed environmental pollution. Next slide, please. Efforts in helping these creatures are based around knowing the exact location of their habitat sites away from plantations. A lot of further study on the animals are needed. Next slide, please. The Procamparus clarkia freshwater crayfish from northern Mexico and south United States are being found and growing in the Amazon rainforest, although their presence shows little to no signs of damage to the rainforest. Next slide, please. The Beucia pentamera, Malistomatacea, is an invasive organism that is spreading in Gunung Planung National Park due to selective logging, allowing them to grow due to reduced competition. Next slide, please. Local illnesses to organisms. Malaria, which is naturally transmitted by mosquitoes. They favor shaded, non-polluted waters. Then there's tegumentary leishmaniasis, a high incidence disease found in many animals and instincts of the genus Lutzomia. And then yellow fever, an endemic that uses non-human primates as reserves during the disease's sylvatic cycle. But luckily a vaccine was invented in 1951. Next slide, please. That is it.
Any questions?
Anyone have any questions for these guys? Very well done.
Yes, very good, guys. Very good. Thanks for picking up. There's evidently some connectivity issues going on at Morgan and Matthew's house. So, but thanks for catching it and just picking up the slack.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, you guys did great. Really well done.
Yay.
All right, our next presenters. All right. We'll screen this. So biome on the desert. All right, you guys are good to go.
Okay, somebody get started. There we go.
This is the desert biome presentation. I am Matthew.
Iman.
I'm Diana. I'm Taylor.
This is a picture of the deserts around the world, mostly found around, actually pretty much everywhere except for Antarctica, and that's its own kind of more Arctic desert. You get them in Africa, Asia, Australia, South America, US, Europe's generally free of them. Next slide.
Okay. So the Sahara Desert mainly in Africa. The Sahara Desert is extended eastward from the Atlantic Ocean, 3,000 miles from the Nile River to the Red Sea, and southward from the Atlas Mountains of Morocco and the Mediterranean shores. The Sahara Desert impacts almost all of the countries of Africa. Next slide, please. The Sahara Desert has several climates. The annual average of the rainfall is equal to no more than few inches or less. In some locations, no rain means none for several years. Some inches falls in a torrential downpour. In the summer, the temperature in all day will go over 100 Fahrenheit. The highest temperature meteorologists have ever recorded was 136 Fahrenheit. And the evening temperatures may go down to 40 or more. In the wintertime, freezing temperatures may occur in the northern Sahara Desert and mild temperature across the southern Sahara Desert, and then snow may fall occasionally in the high mountains. Next slide.
The golden jackal, one of the main animals we'll be discussing. It inhabits Africa, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, and Central Europe. More related to the gray wolves and coyotes than actual other jackals, and is known for its, also known as the gold wolf, the common jackal, and the Asiatic jackal. The adult female weighs from 11 to 11 kilograms, 6 to 13 for the male. The fur color actually changes by season, but primarily is the yellowish golden brown with brown shades that kind of the name comes from, and also sheds in the spring and fall. The body length of an adult is usually about 85 centimeters, and they stand about the shoulder height is about 50 centimeters. Next slide. The dens are usually made in level ground or dense shrubs, about 1 meter in depth and 2 in length. They have packs up to 10 members, and they hunt in the summer and will even hoard food when it is plentiful. They also form commensal relationships with other animals, like tigers, though they are also expert trackers and attackers themselves, with even other predators like hyenas following their tracks, knowing they're good for it. And while they are mainly carnivores, they will also eat fruits, bulbs, and plant roots if required. Next slide. The desert monitor lizard, also called the gray lizard, it's the most widely distributed monitor lizard in the Sahara Desert, which is where this PowerPoint is going to be about. They are found in dry places also found in dry places of the Middle East, Pakistan, and India. And those in Pakistan are divided into Caspian monitors and the Indo-Pak monitors. They have a snout length from 560 to 570 millimeters and tail length of 865 to 870 millimeters. The upper body color varies from yellowish brown to gray, with brownish cross bars across the body, and the pattern loses its vividity when it gets older. Next slide. They're very secretive animals, only active in the early morning when they hunt, otherwise they're just in their burrows. They love hot weather, figures for their environment, and if they are threatened, they will stiffen their legs, raise their bodies in an arched position, hiss and snarl with their neck puffs up, they extend their tongue, and they switch their tail side to side. And one bite can even cause dizziness, muscle pain, fast heart rate, and breathing difficulty. Females live during March and May, up to like 10 to 25 in a burrow, and they cover them with debris and vegetation to protect them. They are carnivores, and they may eat toads, frogs, eggs, birds, snakes, other lizards, and rodents. Next slide, please. The secretary bird. They prefer to live in scrub areas, open savannas, and grasslands, and they perch and nest in the cedar trees. They're also very territorial, with their territory spanning about 19 square miles, and they can either live in pairs or up to groups of 5. They have a height of 54 inches, wingspan ranging from 75 to 87 inches, and weigh about 5 kilograms. They have gray plumage with white streaks, hooked bills, and the longest legs of all birds of prey. They actually prefer walking, but they are no less good flyers. Next, please. The couples actually make flight. making stick nests 1 foot deep and 8 feet wide and up to 3 eggs at a time per nest. They hatch after only 46 days of sitting, which the female finally does the sitting while the male hunts for them. They are carnivores, like pretty much every animal on this list, and they usually hunt in the early morning. And they eat a lot, mainly different mammals and reptiles, even leftover carcasses if necessary. Their prey include mongoose, hares, mice, snakes, lizards, scorpions, crabs, insects, bird eggs, young birds, and tortoises. They're also expert snake hunters, as shown in the picture above, and they will go after even the venomous ones with expert hunting skill. Next, please. Last but not least, the DEATHSTALKER scorpion. Their population is mainly found in the Middle East and northern African side of the Sahara, preferring dry areas and very hot climates. They inhabit underground holes abandoned by other animals, areas between debris, and even human homes. Their color ranges from yellow to orange with gray in the abdomen and a size averaging 2.2 inches. Some even reach 3, but not that many. And they weigh about 2.5 grams. They have 7 pairs of eyes, one on the top of the head and the rest on the sides. Next slide, please. Despite their size, their name is quite fitting. One sting from their tail fills the bloodstream with venom, which can cause dysfunction of both the respiratory and cardiovascular system. And if you don't treat it, as shown by the guy down here, this is an example of what it can do to you, it can kill you. Might come in? Okay, could you go back one real quick, real quick, 2 seconds? Hello? Might come. Okay. Yeah, they are nocturnal carnivores. They hunt insects, centipedes, earthworms, spiders, other scorpions, and they'll even cannibalize their own kind if necessary. Forgive me? Next slide, please. So, in the Sahara region, North Africa, including countries such as Chad, Mali, and Sudan, there's a drastic decrease in wildlife populations, including stuff such as adexes, gazelles, cheetahs, even elephants. And the reason for this is because of a huge increase in armed conflict, be it terrorism, human trafficking, and organized crime. So these groups will move into areas that only really nomads would touch, and so we get the general human destruction problems: mining, grazing, agriculture, and general urbanization. Next slide, please. The solution here is to map and monitor the conflict hotspots, actively combat criminal networks, and work on some wildlife and resource management area, as well as also international treaties to kind of set up things of how to deal with stuff with wildlife and humans going forward, as well as some corporate social responsibility for their part in all of this. Next slide, please. We're going to jump to Australia real quick here. Meet the Kowari. They're from Australia, and they mainly live in sandy areas of stony gibber pavement. The males only get about as big as 175 grams, 140 for females, and they have a maximum weight of about 6. They're nocturnal and mainly feed off little invertebrates, as well as even small rodents. What's happening is that the Kowari's burrows and the grassland around the homes that they go around in is being destroyed, which leaves them vulnerable to predators and apparently even has an adverse effect on the testicles of the males, probably due to the stress. Next slide, please. All right, now the cause, to go into it more, is we have livestock trampling the burrows and eating up all the grassland, as well as introduced predators like feral cats, like pictured above, and foxes, which are eating away at the population. Climate change also might have an effect on this, but the details are a little sparse. The solution here is to limit livestock grazing around the burrows, or just stop it altogether with fences. but also a lot of monitoring needs to continue so we can get a better idea about what's happening with these guys. Next slide, please.
Okay, so for the fungal biodiversity in deserts, desert plants face challenges such as scarce nutrient deficiencies, intense solar radiation, and high temperatures. To overcome these issues, desert plants have a mycorrhizal symbiosis with the fungal. Actually, it's just like the fungus have a mutual relationship with the plants. Roots. So it's the primary source for benefit for the desert plants because mycorrhizal fungi improves plants' nutrition, exhibit plants with a great rate of growth and higher yields of biomass, fruit, and seeds compared to non-mycorrhizal association. Next, please. For the fungal symbiont in return receive nutrients from the host plant, primarily nutrients which fungus cannot produce. There are few fungal classes that are found in deserts, such as ascomycetes and basidiomycetes. Nearly all plants form mycorrhizal associations, some of which are essential and nearly all beneficial to plant growth and development. Next, please. Deserts microbial communities are adapted to grow under hostile environmental conditions and have a foremost role in ecosystem bioprocesses. Fungi are the most stress-resistant organisms that are able to grow in water secrecy and it tolerant to dissociation through the formation of spores. Next, please. As deserts are frequently visited by tourists and locals, the presence of pathogenic fungi might pose a risk to human health. Fungi that are usually saprophytes may act as opportunistic pathogens. Moreover, fungi can be transported for long distance by the dust movement. Next, please. So the deserts are actually beneficial, unlike what you might think it's not. But deserts are home to 1/6 of the world's population and cover 1/5 of the Earth's landmass. Deserts play an important role in helping animals, humans, and the environment. Next, please. The desert also gives a service to Earth and animals and plants, such as a vast area of plants and animals have adapted to their harsh habitat, and many of these benefits human. Domesticated camels are one example as a reliable transportation for thousands of years. Desert plants, such as dates, are an important source of nutrients. Next, please. There are a significant number of important minerals that are found under the concentration of dry sands, such as gypsum, nitrates, potassium, salts, gold, diamonds, iron, phosphate, and oil. Desert hold 75% of known oil reserves in the world. Next, please. Desert plants have adapted special properties to help them survive in harsh desert climate. Scientists believe that certain chemically based adaptation can have medical applications for humans. Recently, a plant found in Negev Desert in Palestine is believed to help fight malaria. Next, please. And this is for Taylor.
Yep. Desert services to Earth, archaeological discoveries. Arid conditions are ideal for preserving human artifacts and remains, such as mummies in Egypt and China. Discoveries such as these help shape modern understanding of how societies first formed. Next slide.
Plants like cacti, sagebrush, moss, and mesquite characterize the warm deserts of the world. Most desert plants engage in aeropathy, a process by which, along with fungi or bacterial organisms, plants inject poisonous chemicals into the soil to kill other plant roots to reduce competition for nutrients. Next slide. These are the top 10 plants in the Sahara Desert. Almost every single one of these plants are thriving in the desert, although the Labyrinth olive tree is considered endangered due to impacts of climate change. Next slide. And that's it.
Okay, any questions for this group?
Excellent job.
Yeah, very
Excellent
nice.
jobs. I wanted to mention something when you were talking about fungi being spread by the winds. Fungi and seeds to exotic organisms or plants from around the world are tracked in by tourists of all things. You get people visiting places that all this, they may have something on their shoes or the treads of their tires. There's been a study done in several of the American national parks that the biggest amount of exotic species growth, plant life, happens around parking lots in these natural environments. So anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. Y'all did a great job. I'm very pleased. Yay. Okay. All right, so class, you can stick around. You can ask me questions later. Otherwise, you're dismissed to get some of that work done. Please, everybody, finish exam 3.
All right, so next we have some presentations from Professor Morgan. Which one would you like to start with?
Pick one.
All right.
They both kind of lead into each other.
Okay.
So yeah, there we go. That's fine. Okay, so I'm going to talk about endangered organisms of, well, not, I included worldwide, but I have quite a few that are from Virginia, actually. And there's also been a few organisms that have become extinct in Virginia. Okay, next slide. So, what does it mean to be endangered? And notice I'm not saying animals. Notice I'm saying organisms, because it's not just animals that we are losing. Now, we don't generally consider very, very tiny things as endangered because we don't see them well enough to count them. But anything that you see, that you used to see many years ago and no longer see, these are animals or plants that have become endangered. Now, being endangered means that the population has been reduced, and there's many ways populations can be reduced, such that their numbers are so small they cannot thrive in their native range. So we'll talk about some of those animals in a few minutes, but what happens is the numbers get reduced in the populations, and so instead of thriving, they start inbreeding, and when they start inbreeding, the health of the new offspring declines. It's not as strong as the ancestral populations. And so what first starts to happen is that you have very big range for an organism to live in, but due to human impacts, we chop up this big range into smaller sections so that you have a lot of little populations, and then those little populations become locally extinct, leading to a complete extinction in the foreseeable future. Okay, next slide. All right, so these are some worldwide animals that have become completely extinct or have been reduced to so few numbers there are no wild individuals right now. And so we can talk about some of these. Up in the upper left corner is the Tasmanian tiger. Yes, that is a cat. It is not a dog, it's a cat. But we hunted them to death, literally. Their habitat was reduced due to human habitation expanding, but then when they'd come and raid and steal your chickens or your dog or cat, people would hunt them down, and we literally eliminated them by hunting. Up in the upper right hand corner, that is the black rhino, and they're gone. They're extinct. And that happened in my lifetime. We won't discuss how long that is, but it's sad that my children and now my grandchildren will no longer have an opportunity to see this organism alive, even in captive museums, live museums. Let's see, is my pointer working? I don't know if my pointer's working. On the left side, maybe I'll just go down. That is a river dolphin, and there's many different species of river dolphin, but unfortunately, this one is the Bengali, and it is gone. It's absolutely extinct. And one of the reasons this one lives in the rivers in China due to encounters with motors on boats, getting caught up in fishing nets. I have a very sad picture to show you in a minute. Pollution, as well as hunting them to death for their meat. On down, the quokka looks like a zebra. It is actually a different species, but they're gone. They inhabited southern Africa. Let's see, below that is the dodo bird. And we think, the stories have been said that the dodo bird was a large flightless bird, probably about the size of a turkey with, smaller wings, because it didn't need to fly. It is hypothesized to be the most perfectly adapted organism because it lived in absolute harmony with its environment around the Mauritius Islands. And sailors would come by, and yeah, we hunted them, but they didn't have very good meat, so they weren't hunted to death as rumor has it. What actually happened was sailors, merchants would leave behind goats and pigs and other animals to forage, so that when they were in that area again, they could restock their ships. They weren't actually eating the dodos. What happened was they imported exotic species, and these exotic species actually crowded them out. Ground nesting birds, their eggs were eaten by the goats. Cats would escape, rats would escape whenever the ships were nearby the islands. So this perfect world all of a sudden had introduced organisms that caused their annihilation. The skipper at the very bottom is it's extinct. This one we lost because of habitat loss. Then you have the to the right of that is the Caribbean seal, and it's gone. It's hunted again. Seals have wonderful fur, just beautiful fur. And back in the early 20th century, vanity took over the human population, and these seals were hunted to death, to extinction, because they had such beautiful coats. The Pyrenean impala just above, to the left, also due to loss of habitat is no longer with us at all. I'm going to skip some of these. The tortoise, that's one of, this one is Lonesome George, died in 2015, was the last purebred of his species, died. The parrots below, they were hunted to extinction through the pet trade, believe it or not, poaching. Above that is the passenger pigeon, and I have a really nasty picture to show you of that. It was literally hunted to death. As many as 50,000 birds were being killed a day, and now they're gone. Now the star of our show is this white greater rhinoceros, and these guys are actually still alive. None in the wild. There are no live white rhinos alive in the world, but this little fellow was born 8 years ago. We have probably 20 or 30 rhinos in captivity, and that is the only ones that are still alive today. And yes, they still are breeding, but they cannot breed enough to restock the population. And because of a loss of genetic diversity, because the population is so low and inbreeding, the organism has slowly become extinct. Okay, next slide. Okay, so what causes this? What causes them to become endangered or extinct? Okay, so extinctions happen all the time. We are currently in our 6th mass extinction event for this planet. Okay, a lot of times it's something catastrophic, like a meteor hitting the earth, a volcano eruption, killing off mass populations of organisms, and not just single species, but whole genera and families of organisms become extinct when a catastrophic event happens. But there's other things. Okay, so global climate change, whether it's warming or cooling, you will have a mass extinction. Okay, humans aren't causing this, but humans are aggravating it. Now, we have actually caused some organisms to become extinct, like that passenger pigeon and the black rhino. The black rhino, as well as the white rhino, were being killed for their horns, of all things. So any rhinos that are found living in the wild anywhere in the world are having their horns removed. They're sedated. The horns are literally chopped off. It's like a big fat piece of hair, so it doesn't injure them. It's made of keratin, like hair is made of keratin. So gamekeepers remove the horns so they have no value. So poachers don't kill them for that reason. Passenger pigeons were killed for food or sport. All right. but we do aggravate the decline of many. And a lot of it isn't necessarily hunting or poaching. Next slide, please. So what are we doing? All right, here's a picture of Bolivia. The picture on the left was taken from the air in 1975, and the same area, you can see the same range of mountains and the river that is going through it in May of 2003. And I think most of you can see that there's a huge difference in the amount of green in each of those pictures. All right, so habitat fragmentation. So first off, we start putting roads in, and then we start slash and burn to clear for plantations and crops, or we put neighborhoods, urban development and what have you. Right. The next thing that happens is, because these areas have had native species removed, invasive species start to come in. And remember, they can come in on your shoes or your tires, blown in from the air, or they can be deliberately planted, whether it is a plant or an animal, into a new area. Another thing that humans are doing that we've discussed a little bit is overharvesting of individual organisms, such that we basically hunt them to death. And another thing, many organisms are very sensitive to pollution, whether it is land pollution, oil pollution, or water pollution, air pollution, or things like noise and light pollution. Never thought of that, huh? But an organism that likes to live in the quiet forest is now exposed to street lamps and highway noises, becomes fragile. Those organisms don't reproduce as well. They're nervous, so they just stop reproducing, and there's a decline in the population due to all of these different types of pollution. Next slide. This is a mountaintop in West Virginia, and every tree has been simply removed from this mountaintop for the sole purpose of mining coal. And the coal mine, they not only remove the trees, but as you can see, they also remove the soil. So they've not only removed all the trees, they've removed the soil with microorganisms, but there's no deer, no rabbits, no owls, no foxes, nothing. You see, just substrate. And things don't grow on just substrate. They need to have soil. So this particular environment, the top of this mountain, will probably never recover. Even once they've removed, and even if they bring in tons, metric tons of topsoil, this environment, this ecosystem will not recover. So any animal, any plant that was lost is gone. It's gone forever. And yes, we do play with genetics, but we will never have the original organism back. Next slide, please. All right, so here's the really sad thing, over-harvesting. Look at that poor sea turtle caught up in a fisherman's net. And if the net is made from him, it decomposes. It rots away, and the turtle could get loose. But most of these are polycarbon or synthetic fabrics that bacteria and fungi don't like to eat, so they persist. They persist in the environment. So these turtles are endangered because, remember, they're animals, and all animals must breathe oxygen. This guy drowns because he's caught up into this net and cannot get to the surface to breathe. All right. Top left, that guy is standing on a mountain of passenger pigeons. That's what that is. This picture was taken in around 1918, and these guys prided themselves in the number of passenger pigeons that they could kill. Below that, those are elephant tusks. And again, elephants are hunted for the use of their tusk, which if they just took the tusk, the animal would probably be all right, but they don't. They kill the animal and remove the tusk. So the habitats, the rangers in these reserves where you can find these elephants actually sedate them, remove their tusk, and turn them loose so that there's no reason to poach them. But before we started doing that, millions of elephants were hunted solely for their tusks. So we could have our jewelry and our spatial hilts of our guns and knives and what have you. So we could have their ivory, all right? Up towards the middle, you see a bunch of tiger skins. I mean, why hunt a tiger? You want the skin to lay on your floor or to wrap around you? Well, that's what the tiger was using it for, and he wants it back. We will never get these organisms back. Up in the upper right corner, these are tropical birds, parrots, that are declining in numbers because of the pet trade. The pet trade. Pretty soon, the only people that will be able to see them are the people who go and visit the zoos, because their numbers in the wild are declining so fast that irreparable damage is happening. Below that, you can see where we are clear-cutting forests for the wood. And okay, so we cut down a few trees. Why don't we plant trees back? Well, after we've cleared the forest, we turn it over to somebody and they do something else with it. Instead of regrowing the forest, which then allows it to recover. And if you move around Virginia and see where plantations used to be, you can see that it does recover, or can recover if we allow it to. But oftentimes it's not. Now, the bottom picture, you see all these sharks, and a lot of times the sharks are only killed like the elephants for their gills or for their fins. And the rest of it is thrown back into the ocean, often still alive. Now, shark meat is also a good meat, but we are hunting these poor creatures to extinction. Now, the star of this picture is this little pangolin in the middle at the bottom, and they are severely endangered. These are the only mammals that have scales instead of fur, but they are mammals. And people kill these animals for their scales, for all these invented pseudoscience needs, anything from cures to cancer to aphrodisiacs. That's what their scales are used for. They're docile little creatures. Well, not so little. They're very much the size of an anteater. But again, they're being farmed, so yes, they're not gone, but they are so severely threatened that their future is not long. And a note of interest, current news with COVID-19. Part of the blame, because COVID-19, we believe, is hypothesized to have started in bats, who then gave it to pangolins, who then gave it to Homo sapiens in the wet markets of China. So no, China didn't invent this virus, but it was where it started to spread. And it jumped from species to species to Homo sapiens. And it's because of these wet markets. Okay, next slide, please. So these are some Virginia critters that are endangered. Up in the upper left, that's the cockaded woodpecker. And they like long needle pine forest. So you think about southeastern Virginia is where these guys like it the best. They like old growth forest. They eat insects that eat these trees. So their service to the community is twofold. They reduce the number of predators on these trees, and they maintain the trees. Below them is a salamander. I'm drawing a blank on its name. It too is in danger. You see it crawling on a bed of moss. Used to inhabit most of the Piedmont area of Virginia. Next to that is the Carolina, it's a water bird, and it too is endangered. There's several bat species that are endangered, partly due to habitat loss. In fact, most of these due to habitat loss. But there are some bats that are succumbing to this fungus that was brought to America from Europe. Above that is the sturgeon. I'm drawing blanks here, sorry. And again, this guy needs open waterways, needs quiet, moving water. And what do? We pollute it. We chop them up with our motorboats. We destroy their eggs, their fish fry nurseries. And so their populations, they like fresh water, smooth, slow moving water that they can live comfortably in. Above that, this is a type of skipper. It's in the butterfly family or order of butterflies and moths. It's a skipper. And again, habitat destruction is the biggest thing that is reducing the numbers of this skipper. And in the middle, this is the bog turtle. That's an adult you see in the palm of this person's hand for perspective. They're tiny, but again, we're draining the bogs. We're draining any type of swamp or lowlands where this guy is happy. And again, we are causing this. This is not something that climate change is affecting. This is something that Homo sapiens are doing. Next slide, please. Next slide, thank you. All right, so I've been showing you a lot of animals, but there's many plants that are also endangered. Top right, this one grows in rather depleted soil, like at the beaches and what have you. Drawing so these have some rather interesting names and hard to pronounce, but I'm drawing a blank even on the common name. Below it is the swamp rock lichen. Now, all of these organisms are losing habitat. They're losing places that make them happy. And they're losing them to man, to Homo sapiens, all right? In the middle, this is the roundleaf birch, and it's possibly extinct. We don't know. We haven't seen it in several decades. Native to Virginia or the Piedmont area, and we're losing them because we're cutting them down. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is what you can do. And look at this picture. This is a really interesting picture. This is not the United States. This is a land bridge over a highway. Now, we do have some land bridges, but they're not quite as welcoming as this. This one is in Holland, and they built one that was very wide and surrounded by trees to block out the noise and pollution from the highway. And you can see that it's being recovered by brush and grasses. Okay, so what can we do as an individual, as a community, as a nation to help fight the loss of these organisms? Okay, well, the first thing you can do is talk to your family. So when you walk up to an insect, just pick it up and throw it outside. If you're kind of squeamish about that, yeah, I understand. I won't pick them all up either. Get a cup, put a cup outside. Recycle and buy sustainable products. Okay, yeah, you may spend an extra $1, but it'll last longer. But recycling, let's talk about recycling a little bit, okay? It's not just talking about reusing glass jars instead of buying more Tupperware or Gladlock bags. It's go to the thrift store. Do you really need a new lamp? Do you really need a new pair of pants? Can you buy a pair of pants that somebody has outgrown or shrunk from, but it's still in good condition? All right. Another thing is we grow too many exotic species in our yards. Grow native plants. Now, all the grass in your yard came from Europe, believe it or not. It's not native to the US. We brought it over because we liked it. All right, so grow native plants. Reduce your water consumption. No, that doesn't mean stop drinking water. Drink your water, okay? But mulch around your plants so that they retain water. Get high efficiency appliances that use less water for washing clothes and washing dishes. Take shorter showers. If it's brown, flush it down. If it's yellow, let it mellow. It's okay. Okay. Reduce your personal footprint. My students have this activity where they go on to measure their personal footprint, and some of them are pretty shocked to see how badly they impact the environment. Okay, so reduce your personal footprint. Do not buy plastic products. You know, there's something to be said about paper cups. All right, yeah, they're throwaway. And glass breaks. So buy paper, but don't buy styrofoam. Don't buy plastic. I like the reusable tubs you get with spreads and margarines and things like that. Yes, that's plastic, but I didn't buy the plastic. I didn't go out and buy some reusable plastic containers. I have reusable sandwich bags. Turn them inside out after I've used them, rinse them off, and I use it the next day. And I probably have used, I have a set of 3 that I've probably used for the last decade. The last decade that are sandwich and quart size. That means I didn't buy any Ziploc, Gladlock, whatever store-bought brand locking bags to bring my lunch in or store food in. Okay, and I'm really good about using my pickle jars to store food. Makes it great, and you can see into it. Okay, all right, next slide, please. What else can you do? Pressure your civil servants to take action. Work with them in suggesting ways to reduce the public impact of their carbon footprint, right? Volunteer your time to protect wildlife in your area. Now, that may mean going and picking up trash. It may mean weeding a culvert that allows a free flow of water that helps maintain. Don't purchase products from companies that are known polluters. Anybody ever heard of DuPont and where we discovered the antifreeze we put in our cars? Look up the Canal River Valley in DuPont, all right? Get in touch with your fish and game department and see what they are doing, and if there's things that you can do to help in your areas. Don't buy from the black market. Buy real stuff. Do not buy ivory. Do not buy pelts. Do not buy smuggled parakeets. You would be horrified to hear how some of these things are. Parrots are smuggled into the United States. And reduce the amount of herbicides and pesticides that you use in and around your homes. Many herbicides are unnecessary. There's mechanical efforts that take efforts, but it's called pulling weeds to kill out herbicides, putting down mulch to reduce their regrowth. And believe it or not, you'll feel better afterwards because you've gotten some exercise as well. Pesticides, I believe in mechanical properties there too. If you see a black widow spider, step on it, smash it, whatever. But if very few organisms do I recommend using a pesticide on. I recommend using wraps around trees, diatomaceous soil, which is highly toxic to organisms that feed on crops, but the plants don't take them up, so we don't get it. And it doesn't hurt the environment because it's a naturally biodegradable substance. Next slide, please. This one must be over. So this is where I got all my pictures from. These are all online sources and some of the information that I got. So if you're interested, check it out. Okay. Chris, are you there? Thank you. Okay, Chris, before I start this one, I think I want to take a 2-minute break because I'm dry, and I'll be back in about a minute and a half. So why don't you talk to people, and I'll be right back with you.
All right. So thank you all for joining us for our Earth Day 50th anniversary. We will have one more presentation from Dr. Morgan. But in the meantime, while she's taking her break, I do want to remind you that we have our bingo challenge going on this week. You should have received your Earth Day bingo card challenge virtually earlier this week on Monday. It is ongoing through this Friday, the 24th. And once you've completed up, down, diagonally in a row, you can submit your card to engage@lfcc.edu. and you'll be entered for a random drawing for a $100 Visa gift card. And that's courtesy of the Sustainability and Chase Committees that's promoting health and wellness. The challenge itself is getting you outside while also practicing social distancing. So make sure that you're keeping in mind, others around you and observing social distancing. Things like planting, recycling, putting down technology for a little bit of time, things like that. So just if you want to participate in the challenge, you still have a few more days. And you just submit those by the 24th of this month. And then we also have some more upcoming events. Make sure that you're checking those out on the LFCC website. And I think, Dr. Morgan, are you ready?
I am back.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you for that. I wanted to mention also, did you bring up the bookstore is selling some items. It's celebrating Earth Day as well, and
Yes.
some discounts. I don't remember off the top of my head, but real quick, while we're talking about recycling and reducing our plastic, not all plastic is bad. I don't know if you can see this. Chris, can you see it?
Yes.
It is the LFCC water bottle. And whenever this came out, I've been using it ever since. I put it in my dishwasher and wash it and reuse it over and over again with my water, my bottled water or whatever. All right. My bottle is special because I took it to my brother and he drilled a hole in the lid so that I could put a straw in it.
Nice.
Which is really nice when I'm mowing the lawn and you don't have to take the lid off it to get a drink. And what is this? This is a stainless steel straw. Again, I have to wash it. I have a special straw brush that these brushes have been around for decades. They came out when Camelbacks came out in the 80s or 90s, 70s maybe. I used to use them all the time backpacking. So these are plastics that you use again and again and again that the plastic water bottles that crinkle when you touch them. See, these don't crinkle. Those are the ones that degrade and cause disease. So I don't recommend getting bottled water. If you're going to get bottled water, get a bottled water dispenser and bottle your own water with either a jar or a bottle that is designed for reuse. Okay, and I can talk more about that after this presentation, unless you'd like me to continue now. Should I go on with this guy?
Yeah, I would go ahead and do this one.
Okay.
Thank you.
So invasive species. So what we have, these are all things that we have moved from around the world to America. That it wasn't always here. The Congo grass outcompetes native grasses, probably as bad as your front lawn outcompetes native grasses. What's on your front lawn is not a native grass. It's an exotic species that was brought here from Europe. The brown tree snake. Hawaii never had snakes until we brought some in. And what's happening with this guy is he likes to eat birds' eggs. In Hawaii, because of its low numbers of natural predators, many of them are ground nesting birds. Let's see, Japanese honeysuckle. We all love honeysuckle, don't we? It's not from around here. Another problem with Japanese honeysuckle is that poison ivy likes it. And wherever you see honeysuckle, you often see poison ivy with it. Dutch elm disease is a fungus that came to America. Wild boars were imported. This beech vitex, and I understand also these are all common names, and I wouldn't want to mess up their real names. But again, outcompeting natural grasses that normally grow and maintain beech landscape. This little bat is becoming endangered due to a fungus that we brought over from Europe and is now infecting most of our cave bats. And then the European gypsy moth, we also brought over from Europe, and these are now devastating our forest. Okay, now this bat, this white nose syndrome, the bat's not invasive, the fungus is. Okay, so next slide. Let's see what I've got on here. Okay, so exotic or invasive. So an exotic plant is a plant or an exotic organism, any kind, okay, is an organism that has been moved from its naturally occurring ecosystem to a foreign ecosystem, right? So invasive plants are also exotic plants, but not all exotic plants are invasive. So that's the big difference, all right? Now, how do they move? There's actually two ways organisms move to a new ecosystem. Humans, and I've got on here a primary means, but maybe not. I don't know if we just don't know of all of them. But humans bring things around because we like that they remind us of the old world where our ancestors came to populate this country or this piece of land after it was populated from the far west and Asian communities. So we've brought over things like the sparrow, the starling, your front lawn, many of the trees, the cherry trees around Washington, D.C., all over the Piedmont area. Landscapers have brought in two particularly obnoxious trees, the mimosa tree and the Asian pear, both from Indonesian countries. And they have no ways of being controlled. All right, so we brought these in. Now, sometimes we bring things in by accident. Those trees I just mentioned were quite deliberate. Russian thistle. You ever heard of tumbleweed? That came from Russia. We liked it because it kind of helped break up the monotony of the landscape. It kept soil in place, things like that. And we brought them in. They're pretty. They remind us of home. But there have been some organisms that have hitchhiked, and we're not 100% sure when they arrived, but they started to take over. And one of the latest ones was this marmorated stink bug from Asia. Again, no natural organisms. I tell you what, my cats won't even play with them, much less eat them. All right. Then we have things that just kind of happen, like Darwin's finches in the Galapagos. All right. Some wrinkle in nature happened. The cattle egret, Bubucus ibis. Right. They are typical in Africa, on the plains, on the savanna, and they like to follow herds of mammals that move around, and they keep the cattle, the hartebeest, the wildebeest, the elephants, and the like, free of parasites, fleas and ticks and things like that. And they also will eat insects kicked up by the animals when they walk and what have you. So they're a really beneficial organism in the savanna, but somehow one or some somehow ended up on the northeast coast of South America. We have no idea how they got there. They may have been brought in by a sailor. We don't know. But it is hypothesized that it caught a windstorm or landed on a ship traversing the seas and hopped off when it felt like it. We also believe that's how Darwin's finches spread, because the Galapagos Islands are way too far away from the mainland for those birds to fly. So we hypothesize they got caught up in a storm or rafted on a piece of driftwood or something of that nature, but somehow they made it. And now this cattle egret has spread clear through South America, up through Central America, into the United States, and extends all the way up the West Coast now. Now, whether it's the same species or not, time will tell. I don't know what kind of research is being done to see if genetically they are the same species as the one you still find today. That was, what, 120, 130 years ago that this happened. Is that enough time for a speciation event? And maybe. Next slide, please. Okay, so an exotic species is one that doesn't do any damage, all right? So your front lawn, unless it gets into your victory garden, it really isn't bothering anybody, all right? These organisms, your front lawn doesn't hurt the earth, all right? And soybeans, think about the soybean. You like soybeans, huh? Again, these are from Asia. Soybeans were grown in Asia, very, very high protein content, very good protein substitute for those who cannot consume dairy. And we brought them over deliberately, and they're under good control. They don't grow uncontrollably like some organisms that we have deliberately brought in. So this is one that these are two examples of organisms that we've brought in deliberately that haven't caused any problem. Okay, next slide, please. Now, the invasive. The invasive, whether it is introduced deliberately or accidentally or by non-human means at all, these cause damage. And what they do is they not only cause damage to the environment, but they can also cause economic damage to the livelihood of Homo sapiens. So again, an invasive species is something living outside its normal historical range, same with exotic species, but these guys actually grow uncontrollably. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's an example. Kudzu, all right? The scientific name, Kowari montana. All right, again, it was imported from Asia. Very pretty plant. It's very, very pretty. We brought it in to line the irrigation ditches of our plantations to prevent erosion of the soil in those ditches. And they did an excellent job. But if you can see in the background of this picture, it's consuming that house. I mean, literally, there is nothing here that eats it. Absolutely nothing that eats it. So it grows and outcompetes. It grows faster than anything that is native. It strangles, it uses up the water, it uses up all the nutrients in this landscape, such that the native naturally occurring organisms are dying. And if you look around in that picture, you'll see that there's quite a few trees that are literally covered. In the front, here in the foreground, that was a bush that's been engulfed by this kudzu. Next slide, please. Now, about a decade ago, this Megacopa cribriaria, okay, close enough. Anyway, it's the kudzu bug. We have a natural predator to kudzu. We're not sure how it got here, but it got here. And these are what they look like, these little insects on this plant. And it does eat kudzu, but it likes soybean and other legume crops better. So yes, it could do some damage to the amount of kudzu that we have in our East Coast area, but it's more likely to do a lot of damage to our crops. It really does enjoy soybeans. Next slide. No natural predators, okay? This is the zebra mussel. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. It came over, we found it, it's guessing in about 1988 in the ballast water of commercial shipping. And it was released into the environment, into the Great Lakes region. You can see the zebra mussel is about the size of your fingernail. And nothing eats them. Nothing eats these things. I'm wondering if we put out some clown loaches, if they would help with the control. These guys do a great job at my pond snails. But anyway, if you look at in the upper right corner, that is a water pipe. And it is totally blocked by the presence of these zebra mussels breeding uncontrollably because nothing eats them. If you look in the other picture, this may be a little hard to see, but that is a boat that has been dry docked. And what has happened is the zebra mussel has so encased the motor, the outboard motor of this boat, that it no longer runs, it no longer works. So not only does the zebra mussel cause a lot of damage, it outcompetes native species. And native species literally starve out because these other mussels are so productive that they consume all the natural resources available to native species. And it's estimated, now this PowerPoint's a couple years old, so it's estimated it comes close to $80 million of damage a year in the Great Lakes region alone. That's just the Great Lakes regions. We find them in nearly all freshwater systems, whether they are artificial lakes or natural lakes. But these zebra mussels are popping up everywhere. Now, you wonder, the Great Lakes have water access, so merchant ships can come in and out, and it's really easy to see how the Great Lakes were infected. But how does your backyard pond get infected with zebra mussels? The answer is duck's feet. Ducks will be swimming around the water, and a few eggs will stick to their feet, and lo and behold, they're all in a new region. Next slide, please. The Scotch thistle. Now, you've seen these, and of course, these came from Western Europe, Great Britain, and even the mainland. These are a symbolism of Scottish ancestry. All right, and it was brought into this. Look at that. That's a beautiful flower. It is quite pretty. Don't try to weed your yard of these without shovel and gloves, though, because those spines on it are horribly painful. So you can't just pull them up. All right, but we brought it over here because we liked it. All right, now what happens is it gets into your lawn, kind of like it grows like a dandelion. And if you're like me, I like to run around barefoot. And not that it causes infection or cuts or splinters or anything like that. It is like stepping on carpet tacks when you step on one of these things. So about the only way to control it is by hand. I do not recommend poisons, but they are very prolific. I had one go to seed one year because I didn't get to it quick enough. And the next year, I was paying my grandsons $0.25 apiece to dig them up. And they got rich that summer. So anyway, next slide, please. Okay, so what do they do in the new ecosystem? All right, they can be very, very harmful to an ecosystem. All right, and so I've got pictures here of one exotic invasive organism and the effects of it has on two native occurring organisms. Okay, so it outcompetes native species. All right, so let's talk about this red imported fire ant, Solenopsis invicta. And they're a tiny little ant. You wouldn't believe that they could cause so much trouble as small as they are. Their sting is nasty. It's very nasty. Yes, I've been stung. And they leave welts on you that'll be there for 2 or 3 days. Now you can get stung by a lot of different ants, and most of it is gone like a mosquito bite. But their sting is quite painful. And they outcompete native species like this harvester ant, Pogona myrmex, which is a naturally occurring North American ant with about 30 species. And these are sweet little ants that collect seeds. Now, when I say that, if you get stung by one of these, their sting is 10 times as bad as the red imported fire ant, but they're docile otherwise. And the red imported fire ant actually outcompetes the harvester ant, even though the entire red imported ant can be about half as long, maybe a fourth as long or as big as the harvester ant. They damage agriculture. How do they damage agriculture? Well, these guys tunnel through the ground and they raise aphids. They like aphids. They clear out organisms that would normally help crops grow, organisms in the soil as well as those that inhabit the crops otherwise. And so it reduces our crops, causing economic loss. Okay, now these ants cannot grow in the desert. Where you find these ants is in places with lots of water, because that's how they migrate. Well, that's how they disperse, not migrate, but disperse. So in Louisiana, Alabama, which is where they first arrived in Alabama in about 1933, I think it is, in the ballast of coffee barges. They landed and floated out of the ballast and took hold, and have since spread across the southern United States. Well, you see, a lot of the southern United States is desert, and they can't live in the desert. So where do they live? They live in your backyard where you water. They live on golf courses where you water. They live in parks where you water. But now you have nurseries for plants, for trees in these areas, and you'll have a nest growing in one of these pots for a tree that is then transported to another state. And now you have transported it from Louisiana, Alabama to, they're real bad in the eastern part of the state of Texas, but they go all the way through Arizona, all the way out to California. And if you wonder, Arizona will not allow a truck through unless they've been fumigated to decrease the movement of this red imported fire ant. But we move them. They cannot just move themselves in the United States. They always flow downriver when they move, or they hitchhike a ride in a plant pot. But anyway, so let's get back to some of its ecosystem devastation. So they're out competing the harvester ant, which is in a dramatic decline. It is not yet threatened or endangered, but this harvester ant is the sole food source for this Texas horned lizard, which is endangered. And these are docile little animals that only eat ants. That's it. So this guy is actually endangered, not just due to food loss, but to habitat loss. But we are literally, or the red imported fire ant is literally starving the Texas horned lizard. Okay, so anyway, next slide. That's the kind of damage, and nothing here eats that ant. All right, next slide. All right, so, questions. So these are all organisms that we have brought in to the United States that are taking over. This koipu rats in the Hawaiian Islands, salt cedars around the Rio Grande had just taken over. You have the golden bamboo, which people brought in for decorative reasons. Giant salvia, which is taking over our waterways. All of these organisms, believe it or not, people buy snakes and then get tired of them, so they just let them loose. And golly, they find another and breed, and now you have a whole bunch of them. All right. This whirling disease, the fish is native, but the whirling disease is not. And it causes these fish to literally go crazy. Okay. Questions? Anybody want to pose any questions? Okay, Chris, I think that's it.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, okay.
Cool. Makes